Okay. All right. Well, welcome. We appreciate you joining us. Sorry, what was that? So I've muted everybody upon entry. If you would like to ask a question at any point, it's probably best to do that in the chat feature, which Gavin will be manning tonight. So if any questions arise pertaining to something I've just said, that's a good time to ask it. So feel free to just put it in the chat and I'll try and cover it at that time. If not, if there's a general question, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. So welcome to the new parents who are joining the club for the first time. Welcome back to all the returning parents. I recognize a lot of names in the list of attendees tonight, so it's great to have you all with us. We're very grateful that your young soccer player is joining us for this upcoming season. And if you're watching it, the recording of this, you know, it's the same to you guys as well. I know everything's been pretty chaotic this week and last week with school starting. You know, my little 7-year-old just started second grade today, so it's been an emotional day, and I'm sure you can all relate to that. So this is being recorded. If there's anything that you miss or there's a slide you particularly want to go over in your own time, I'll post the recording on the website, or Thomas will post the recording on the website, and we'll email the link round to everybody. So tonight, this is what we're going to cover. We do have an hour carved out for this, but really, depending on questions, I know you guys have a lot going on, so I don't want to take too much of your time. It'll probably be 30 minutes, maybe 5 minutes Q&A. But we're going to cover just an overview of the club that's specific probably to our new parents who may not understand the scope of our club and what we do. Who's who at Chicago Edge, just to help you navigate your experience. Season outline, dates of what the next year looks like, our club goals and core values of what we're trying to achieve, our mission statement, some useful tips to navigate the club just to maximize you and your players' experience with us, and then some advice about player development. How do we develop soccer players and good human beings, and some tips about good sports parenting as well, which, you know, good sports parenting is not intuitive, you know, even for the best of parents. So hopefully we can give you some tips to navigate the landscape for however long you're with us. So this is our club. We are 48 teams. I know sometimes when you have your son or daughter in your team, it feels like the whole club is just your player and their teammates and their coach. We use multiple fields, so sometimes it's difficult to get an idea of just the size of our program. We have 48 teams, 668 travel players. Last year we had 46 teams and just around 600 players, so we're up about 10% on last year. We have approximately 250 juniors players who come through our Park District programs with Park District of Oak Park and River Forest Park District. I'm sure many of your sons and daughters came through those programs. And we have 750 summer campers. Our summer camp program is one I particularly enjoy, and it's a very popular part of what we offer. And those programs below the Edge Juniors and the summer camps are available for both Edge players and non-Edge players. We do have some other programs in the winter that we'll talk about a little bit further down the line. So those supplemental programs we do, this is outside our travel offerings. We have our Juniors Academy, as we mentioned. That's a kind of step between recreation, just starting out in soccer, and coming into our Edge Academy and into our travel program. For our U7 to U14 players, we have the winter clinics and the OPRF Community League, which is a fantastic program that I know many of your kids have enjoyed before. The winter clinics are a skill-based program, just skill development in November, December, a kind of time of year when there's not much going on. OPRF Community League is an awesome league where your son or daughter can play with their buddies, neighborhood friends, school friends, family friends, and form a team to play against other local community players. That's a fun league in November, December. And then June 9th to August 8th is when we have our summer camp programs. So who's who at Chicago Edge? That's me in the corner. My name's Murray Finlay. I think I know most of you, but if not, I will hopefully meet you soon. I'm the executive director, and I run the program with Gavin Richards, who is manning the chat feature here. Myself and Gavin started the club with others in 2011, 2012. There were two professionally led soccer clubs, youth soccer clubs in Oak Park and River Forest in the early 2000s. I ran Oak Park River Forest Strikers since 2003. Gavin ran River Forest Rapids, short from mid 2005 or six. And there's limited resources in the community, limited players in the community, and we were kind of fighting each other for both. So we decided, let's merge, and it's been a great partnership ever since, and the club's gone on from strength to strength. And I'm not sure many people know who Oak Park, River Forest Strikers, and River Forest Rapids are anymore, even though they were very important youth soccer programs in the community back in the day. We're supported by Thomas Schaller and Tracy Garcia. Thomas is our administrator. You may know him from several emails you receive. He does the paperwork for the club, and Tracy's our finance manager. That is not a picture of Thomas Schaller. When I was putting this slide together, I realized we did not have a picture of Thomas Schaller. That is a picture of the British actor Sean Bean, but he sent me that because he thinks he looks like him. So it's a close approximation if Thomas did some exercise and ate well, I think. So we are supported by Thomas and Tracy, but they are kind of back of house. It's mainly myself and Gavin run the day-to-day operations, and we're supported in various projects by Serena Marwa Blank, who's a new recruit. She's the Assistant Director of Operations, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we recruited her in a few slides. We have Cesar Ramirez, who your son or daughter may know very well. He's our Development Phase Director, which basically means he's in charge of all our players, U7, U8, and below. So it's his job to oversee the Edge Academy program, Edge Juniors programs with the park districts, and make sure players are coming in from those programs into our U7, U8 program and developing from there. The reason we are so big and we've grown a lot in the last few years is because Cesar's really done an excellent job with that. And Albert Martin is our Director of Goalkeeping. He focuses on developing the goalkeepers in the club. He is also our Director of College Recruitment, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. So that's kind of the management team day to day. Myself and Gavin, supported by Thomas and Tracy, and then Serena, Cesar, and Albert help out with special projects. And we do not have a physical office. I know we get asked that a lot. This is basically the office. This is my office in my house, the spare bedroom, and Gavin, wherever he may be working at that time. So we all work remotely. Thomas actually lives in Indianapolis, but he is all remote and online. Do we have a question, Gav? I see a chat thing.
No, it was okay. It was
okay. So, all right, and here's our coaches. So these are the coaches that you will probably see most of. Many have been with us from the beginning. Kat has been coaching in this community for 14, 15 years now. James teaches in this community. He's coached with us for almost a decade. Aidan is Gavin's son and an ex-player from Chicago Edge and River Forest Rapids. Nate is an ex-player that I coached when he was very young, which dates me, unfortunately. And Des, Tony, and Frank have been with us many, many years. And Marcus has been with us many years. He took last year off, but he's a well-known face in the community as well. Rob is our newest coach. We recruited him from LaGrange Celtics. He's done an excellent job so far. It's someone who I watched coach for LaGrange, and I was very impressed with his demeanor and his coaching style. So we recruited him over the summer. So it's an excellent group, a very experienced group. Mark McKinnon there has been director of coaching of our clubs for many years. So we have a lot of experience in player development and youth sports. So we're very proud of our coaching team. It's been years in the making, and we always try and better ourselves, but we think we have a strong coaching group as any soccer club in Chicagoland. So why do we do it? An important question. So primarily, the goal of the club is to develop a love for the game, develop an intrinsic love for the game, so the kids want to play the game, watch the game, and we realize that in the grand scheme of their lifestyle, your son or daughter will only be with us for a very fleeting moment. They might be with us at most 11, 12 years, likely less. Okay, so we really want their experience with us so they can incorporate soccer in as part of a long-term, part of a healthy and active lifestyle. So they can use soccer and use their experience with us reverberates throughout their life, not just in the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years they're with us. There's lots of research out there that outlines the benefits of youth sports participation, not just soccer, physical benefits, social emotional benefits. And the longer you stay in youth sports, the greater the benefits. So that's what we're trying to instill, the holistic development of our players. You know, the vast majority, again, this is backed by research, the vast majority of youth players play for fun. So we have to keep that as our primary goal of the club. I always tell any group I'm in front of or summer campers, the only 2 rules for the players is have fun, work hard, and be safe. So that's 3 rules. We added the 3rd one. So have fun, work hard. That's their job, is to have fun. We want to develop that love for the game that I have because I still work in the game. I love soccer. It's been a part of my life ever since I could walk. And that's the same with many of our coaches. We want to transfer that love of the sport so they can use it in any way they see fit beyond their time with us. And I mean that even to the extent of if they graduate college, they go to another city, another community, and they know nobody, but they have the skill set that they can join a recreation league and play soccer. And they can meet people that way and create a network that way, or they can go to a bar and watch a soccer game because they have the love for the sport. They meet people that way. They meet like-minded people. So we want them to use it in instances like that. And I love the stories I get from ex-players where they're still playing. Could be recreation, could be with their buddies. And I know there's tons of ex-players playing the recreation league in the lakefront run by Chicago Fire. And I love to hear those stories that they still have a love for the game, that they still play it. Now, our mission statement involve our 3 pillars of the club: community, character, and commitment. You'll see that on our website. You'll see it on the banners of our that we have around the community. We are a community club. We serve Oak Park River Forest. We serve the families in Oak Park River Forest. We do have, and we're very proud to have, families from outside our community, from Elmwood Park, Cicero, Berwyn, LaGrange, Riverside, Chicago, and we're very pleased to have everybody. We're inclusive in that respect, but we understand that about 90% of our families come from Oak Park River Forest, so we're here to serve the community. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in our core values. Now, we want to create a soccer experience that promotes character building, and that speaks to the holistic part of what we're trying to do with the club. We don't want them just to be good at soccer if they hated the experience or they're never going to play again after they're with us. We have to build that character. You know, there's life lessons to be learned in a sports field. You know, the respect for rules, playing with others, all those things. This is where we want them to learn and use those lessons in other parts of their lives. And commitment, you know, professionally trained coaches help committed players develop excellence in individual and team soccer skills. We are a travel club. We realize that is a commitment in time, financial commitment. We're not recreational. You know, we realize that soccer may just be a small part of your schedule, and that's great. Soccer may be your son or daughter's entire life, and that's great too. We aim to accommodate both. But there is a commitment necessary to be part of the club, and our commitment to our families as well is important. So our community, character, and commitment are the 3 pillars of what we're trying to achieve in the club. Now, I'm not going to read all our core values out there, but I do want to draw your attention to the one about the community there. This is one I just added because we value the community involvement of our players and families. You know, our community isn't a big community, and it has pretty limited resources in terms of fields and players. So there's lots of youth sports organizations and just youth organizations in Oak Park River Forest that compete for the same fields and compete for the same players. So we understand that we are part of this network and we have to accommodate that. We don't want to monopolize your child's schedule with all soccer. If your child wants that, we can do that, but we understand you have many different responsibilities as a family, maybe other siblings, other sports, other interests. So we have to work with your schedules. And I'll talk a little bit more how we do that later on when we talk about the practice schedule. But we also support our players doing other sports. You know, playing multiple sports at a young age is the foundation for a healthy lifestyle. There are 2 schools of thought. We call it in the youth sports development world the Tiger or the Roger Federer. You know, Tiger Woods developed at a very young age. He was a prodigy at a very young age because he did golf. But Roger Federer was the opposite. He did lots of sports. He only picked tennis at 14 or 15. And you could argue that Roger Federer has had a much longer career and minus the injuries that Tiger Woods had sustained. So we'll talk a little bit more about playing multi-sports later, but I did want to point that out as we understand we are just part of the fabric of our community, and we value that, and we work with our families to value that too. So this is the season outline. What does the next year look like for your son or daughter who is with us? So we've done the pre-season camp. This is for the U7 to U15 teams for our players born in 2018 to 2010 if they're in 8th grade. Our pre-season camp was 12th to 15th. Our fall season started Monday and it'll go all the way to November 1st. The games may extend to the weekend after that. The final game weekend of the season, I believe, is the 9th or 10th of November. We try and schedule games earlier, and maybe a day or two off with that, but they may go on into November. We obviously try and avoid that for weather-related reasons. The winter season for our U13 and above teams start in November and go all the way through March. So they have 17 weeks of November. Our U7 to U12 teams take November, December off from scheduled training. We found that our families like a little break in the year, and that's where we boot our OPRF Community League and our Winter Skills programs, because there are some players, not just in our club, from the community who like to do things in November, December, and we boot those programs on specifically for them. And then our spring season will start right after spring break, April 7th to June 6th, and will be 10 weeks. The dates are sometimes are a little bit funky for 2025 because I believe spring break is very late next year. It's that first week in April, which throws our dates off slightly. It's usually a little bit, it's usually a week earlier that we start spring season, but next season it will be April 7th to June 6th. And you can see the high school girls and high school boys dates there. I'm not sure if we have any of their older player parents, but you can see them on the right. So this is our player distribution, and I'm going to tell you why I made this slide in a second. So this is where what year our player was born on. The blue is for the boys in the club. The pink is for the girls. So I just wanted to illustrate that our club is, even though it's a lot bigger than it used to be, our goal is not necessarily to grow. We're as big as we want to be. And it's primarily a function of so many young boys playing. You can see 2018 to 2010 boys, our player numbers are very, very large, larger than they've ever been. And which is strange. I point it out because back when I started in 2003, there was the 99 Women's World Cup with Brandy Chastain, for those who remember that. Women's soccer was big news on the front page of every national newspaper. And there was lots of young girls playing soccer. And the club was about 50-50. So in the intervening years, that's kind of tailed off. We're now, I think we're almost like 75-25, 70-30 boys against girls in terms of distribution. And that's not an issue that is exclusive to us. That's every youth soccer program throughout the country is feeling that. There's just less young girls picking up soccer at younger ages. So with that in mind, we started last year our Women's Empowerment Learning Series, Strong Bodies, Strong Minds and Strong Futures. It's basically a learning series for our female and non-binary players. And we're just trying to create more opportunities and empowerment belonging for our female players. And that is primarily why we employed Serena as Assistant Director of Operations. She just graduated from New York University with a global sports business degree, master's degree. And her thesis was on engaging young girls in youth sports. So basically, we're going to try and implement her thesis in our community and beyond to engage the young girls in our program. And I think partly it's because, as you saw with our coaches list there, they're all men. And the lack of role models as coaches in women's soccer or soccer in general probably doesn't help engage young girls in the sport. So part of the learning series, we have a different topic every class. We have 4 throughout the year. Our first one was just different ways in which young girls and when they turn to women can use sports as a viable career path. Because for whatever reason, when I advertise for coaches, 99% are from men. Very few women seem to want to coach or stay in sports as a profession. So we wanted to provide examples of the ways in which women can be in sports as a profession because it's a viable option, whether that's coaching, administration, refereeing, or whatever that may be. So if you are the parent of a girl in our club, you will see some information shortly about our first learning series that Serena will be working with Renee on. And those who have been with us will know who Renee is. She oversees this program. Anyway, I digress there. So tips to navigate the club, just to help you maximize your experience for you as a family and your young players. So please use the app. The app is called Sprocket Sports. Please download it. That will help you navigate our calendar, and use the website so you can RSVP to your coach about attendance at practices and games. You know, we have Sprocket Sports is a really comprehensive platform. I know you get lots and lots of reminders about pretty much everything, and I'm very conscious of that. So when you get reminders about practices, about RSVPing, about games, I'm very conscious not to overload our families with emails from me or Gavin or Thomas just about other information, because I understand you have a lot going on, and I don't want important information to be lost in the woods there. So we're sparing in terms of the overarching emails that we send centrally from a club with information. So we try to make it important information only. But generally, team calendars, team schedules, you can find it on the app, you can find it on the website, and you could communicate in the chat feature with the other parents in your team on the app. And you can just see it all in one place on the website if you're more comfortable navigating the website over the app. But I highly recommend you downloading the app, which is Sprocket Sports, on your smartphone as soon as you can. And please make sure that you RSVP to your coach about attendance at practices and games. That can be through an email, through a text if you have their number, but the easiest way for you guys to do it is through the app. Your coach may have already told you the communication preference that they prefer in terms of RSVPing. So please listen to the coach first and foremost on that. Look out for email notification for cancelled practices. You know, if it is raining outside heavily, storms, there's a very good chance the practices could be in jeopardy. We do not have the final say whether we book practices on or not. We defer to the park districts who run the fields. If there has been a lot of rain over a period of time, it may be that it's a very sunny day, but they have still closed the fields because they are waterlogged. We don't have any recourse to get them to change their mind. They usually tell us at the latest by 2 p.m. If it's an obvious decision, they will tell us earlier. We will tell you as soon as we get the message from them. We don't delay that message. We know you guys need to know as soon as possible if there's any change of schedule, particularly day of. But we will notify you as soon as possible. If you haven't heard anything by 2:30, by all means, just double check with your coach or me or Gavin. But generally, at the very, very latest, we'll get full field closure notifications by 2 p.m. And again, it is not our decision to close fields. Or Gavin primarily gets a lot of emails when the fields are closed and the sun is shining. We'll get emails saying, I just drove past Ridgeland, it's open, why aren't we on that? Well, every single field, grass or turf in Oak Park River Forest is scheduled between 4 and 10. Believe me, we get our allocation, we horse trade for months just to get the small allocation that we do have. Ridgeland may well be open, but someone else has the permit. We have in Oak Park, the Park District has a pact program where they have their partners like us, other youth sports organizations, are on a kind of hierarchy. We are not very high up that hierarchy because we have members from outside Oak Park. And the same goes for River Forest. We have members outside River Forest, and we do tryouts, so we're not inclusive to everyone. So that unfortunately boots us down the food chain in terms of getting all the field space we want, which is a reason why we don't necessarily want to grow any larger than we are. We're about as big as we want to be, just because of the field space we have available to us.
Just a quick addition to that, Murray, that please make sure you check the emails that come out when bad weather happens, because there are some times where they don't close all fields, and there are times when sometimes we're able to move some practices to another place. Doesn't happen all the time, but just be aware to make sure you read and check your emails as to what it says.
So who to go with? Good question. The primary point of reference for you guys will be your coach. The team-specific schedule, if you have questions about that, specific player feedback, which is really important. You know, if you want just feedback about your player, if there's something going on at home or school that may affect performance, your coach needs to know that. Please have a conversation with them. Any team dynamics that you have questions about, minor discipline issues. There's lots of issues that can be solved just with a conversation between you and the coach. Your coach would be the primary interface for you. If you have a question about fields, uniforms, schedule, or tournaments, that would be Gavin. If you have a question about registration and payments, that would be Thomas. But any questions, issues about coaches, about the programs we offer, and major discipline issues, if you think, or if it's about your coach, obviously come to me. And if you're unsure where your question falls, just come to me, and I can either answer it myself or put you in touch with the right person.
Murray, we have a question.
Sure.
What is the best approach to get feedback from coaches on our children's performance? Are
Great
there
question.
quarterly, semi-yearly check-in options, email, in person, etc.?
My preference and the preference of most of the coaches is email, just because they have a time that gives them a bit of time to reflect on the question and get back to you with a fairly comprehensive answer. And some of our coaches, I forgot to mention this before, have jobs, full-time jobs as well. This is their part-time job, or this is their secondary job. Some of our coaches don't have a job as well. It's good to know what your coach's situation, just so you know how to approach that and when to expect an answer. Obviously, our coaches who have a full-time job and then coach in the evening, they're considerably busier than the coaches who do this for a living, because the coaches who do this for a living generally are free during the day. So a phone call may be beneficial or maybe easier for them. So that's a question to ask your coach. But generally, I find that email is a good way to communicate with your coach about player feedback. We do have annual player evaluations. We usually do them in early January. Some coaches will do that, prefer a Zoom meeting, which can be time consuming, but a lot of our coaches who do this for a living do just a 10-15 minute Zoom meeting with the parents just to talk about their player. It can be written, it can be an email, whichever the coach's preferred communication pathway is. But at the very least, it will be early January for a pretty comprehensive player evaluation. And that gives your player time to work on whatever the coach suggests during the winter and throughout spring.
There is
but it's ongoing. You know, please, if you want feedback at any time, our coaches are open to it. So an email mid-fall in a couple of weeks, give the coach time to get to know your player. That would be terrific.
I think you're probably going to talk about this in a little while, Murray, but there was a question of, is there going to be a third practice per week for players who want to practice more than twice a week?
Yes, I will talk about that in a second. Okay, so how to develop players. Okay, we've talked about growing the love for the game, so they build the intrinsic motivation to go and practice. But focusing on the fundamentals is key, particularly at the younger age groups. So we understand that it may be that your player only plays soccer in the 3 hours that they're on the practice field during the week. That will only get them to a certain level of competency. So we have to focus on the fundamentals, get them touching a soccer ball as much as possible in those 3 hours, because we understand that they have many different things in their schedule. So we focus on fundamentals, just touching a ball with both feet, different parts of the foot. Our curriculum is a lot of 1v1, 2v1, small-sided games, just very dynamic activities that promote repetitive actions of dynamic skills, which are a feature of soccer. Long-term development is important as well. We do not care about winning titles, and I'll talk about this a little bit more on the next slide. But when we place teams in divisions, we try and put them in a division that we think they're going to be 500 in. Because winning every game will just make you complacent, and losing every game will probably hurt your motivation to play again. So winning some, losing some is excellent for development. And that means there's a couple of ways to do that in games that coaches do that might weaken the team. So we try and get, especially at the younger age groups, coaches to move players around and experience different positions, because that gives the player a much more well-rounded experience. But that might weaken your team, and that might mean you might lose a game, and that is okay. It is okay to lose a game if your coach is doing that. That means at the younger age group, spreading out game time to make it relatively even. And that's fine too. You know, everyone needs to get a significant amount of game time to improve. I didn't mention this, but you can see this on our website under our policies. Game time U7 to U12 is generally balanced. Now, as coach will not have a stopwatch and time it, but generally they have substitutions at certain times and a rotation that it may mean some players get more, some players get slightly less, but generally over the balance of a season, it's relatively even. Now at U13 above and high school ages where it becomes more a merit based in terms of game time, work rate, commitment, attendance all comes into play. But generally at the U7 to U12, we try and make it as balanced as possible. And a little bit about our Premier Select competitive and travel level. We have 4 levels at some of the boys' age groups, 2 or 3 at some of the girls' age groups. Premier is our A team, Select is our B, competitive is our 3rd, and travel is our 4th team. It does not matter what level of your team at the younger age groups. I ran the numbers a couple of years ago on our U19 varsity team, which was a very closely related to the OPRF varsity team. You know, it was essentially the same team, and only a third most were premier players at the younger ages. A lot came from select, competitive, and travel. Some didn't play travel soccer at the younger ages, but players develop at different times at their own speed. They may drop off. There's attrition. We may pick up some players. Where they are at the younger age groups almost bears no resemblance to where they are at the older age groups, which is what we're trying to achieve: good, well-rounded players at the high school age, essentially. So we're just trying to group them in an environment that we think they will be, they'll maximize their development. You don't want them to be with players who are bigger, stronger, faster, because the bigger, stronger, faster players at practice and games spend most of the time with the ball at the detriment to other players. They're not getting touches. You know, relative age effect is a thing for those who know what relative age effect. If they're in the teaching profession, players born in January, February, March tend to be bigger, stronger, and faster than players born at the end of a cutoff date, so they have an advantage. So that's a consideration when grouping, because we want the players to be in a group of players that are as close to their ability as possible, because it's the best environment for them to develop. Now, how do we get them to play outside the 3 hours other than building this love for soccer? We have free play clinics on a Friday, which are awesome for development. It's just they show up, your player shows up for an hour, hour and a half, just play 3v3s, 2v2s, 4v4s against different players, different ages. It's fantastic for development. It's a dynamic. They have agency over their experience. They make decisions. They can make mistakes. No one's shouting at them. There's no coaching. They're just having fun and learning and getting better by touching a ball in an environment that's safe. Our coaches are there basically to maintain safety and make sure it doesn't get too competitive with the young boys as it can. So I highly recommend your young player to attend our free play clinics. We will have extra practices. Our free play are for players in our U7 to U12 program. There will be extra practices for players in our U13 to U15 program. We're working on that schedule now, for players who want to pick up an extra practice on a Friday as a 3rd practice during the week. And we have our goalkeeper clinics for those players who may have an inclination towards playing in goal. And I highly recommend that. Albert, our director of goalkeeping, is excellent. So if you want to improve your goalkeeping skills for your youngster, regardless of your age, if it's a young boy who just has no fear and does not consider personal safety when they're diving around the field, that's a good starting point to develop them into a goalkeeper. So I would highly recommend them getting out to the goalkeeping clinics, boys or girls. We have an open practice policy with coach approval. So again, we're going back to this, what we talked about in our core values about working with other sports groups, working with family schedules, that if you miss your team practice, we have lots and lots of teams, as we talked about in the club, that are close in age to your son or daughters. They can go and pick up another practice with another team. All you need to do is tell your coach, tell the coach, tell me, so I can relay the message to the coach of the session you're going to. That's primarily just to make sure they don't have too many players if lots of players are doing that, but it's almost never an issue. So we try and work with your schedules on the understanding that you are pulled in many different directions during the season. And that's Friday. Use the extra practice, use free play as a extra practice to make up a missed session. If you miss a session, that is okay. You know, the coach is not going to be angry, especially if you're going to try and make it up at another team's practice. So if you have any questions about what team practice is most appropriate, go to your coach. And if they're not sure, please come to me and I will let you know. And I added this last point because I get asked this a lot. When should my player specialize in soccer? You know, we talked a little bit about the Tiger against Roger development philosophy. It used to be that, you know, the 10,000 hour expertise theory was that you need to get 10,000 hours of soccer before you can be considered an expert, and you start as soon as you can walk, and you should focus on soccer to be good at soccer. But there's so much research out there that suggests that prioritizing any sport, not just soccer, at too young an age, it creates burnout. It's not healthy social emotionally for the young child, injuries for repetitive motions. There's lots of different reasons why specializing in one sport is not holistically healthy for your child long term. So that's why we encourage players to do lots of different sport in their sampling stage, which generally goes up to 12, 13. Now, when you get into high school, by the time you're getting to high school ages, you should really start focusing. If you want to go and play soccer, say in college or beyond, if you want to get in that varsity team, you should start considering focusing on soccer as you get into high school. That's when I would suggest. You can balance it with a high school sport, but doing multiple sports, because we've seen it many times before, is really just it wears down the body physically and mentally. So I would really suggest, because high school sports is tough. You know, it's a tough schedule. It's taken very seriously. It's a lot of hours. To balance that with club soccer as well, it can be difficult. Not impossible for sure, but can be difficult. So I would suggest you specialize in soccer if that is your priority, probably near high school age. But try lots of sports. See what your child likes. Build that athletic foundation. That'll be holistically much better for them long term. Now, I'm going to talk really briefly about this because I'm sure many on this call have young kids, 6, 7, 8, and this is really abstract playing college. But believe me, and as I'll talk about in the next slide, it comes quickly. So we have a director of college recruitment, which is Albert, who doubles up as our director of goalkeeping. We have 5 to 7 players every year go off to play college, either a club or varsity, because they've really committed to soccer throughout the high school years and they want to play it beyond. We have some players who've been at the club who are playing professionally at the moment. Beyond that, it takes a lot of commitment to get there. So I just mentioned this briefly. And certainly, if you have an 8-year-old, do not email Albert or call his cell about playing in college. This is only as they approach the high school ages, because you will be inundated with emails probably from recruiting agencies, say, offering their services to get your son or daughter a place in college and charging thousands of dollars for the privilege. But we keep it in-house and make it free to our families, that we have someone for you to help you navigate that whole landscape, because it can be quite confusing. But again, probably for the vast majority of parents in this call, it won't be relevant for a few years yet.
Murray,
Yes,
question.
sure.
What support do we, the club, provide for kids entering high school next year?
Sorry, what report?
What support do we, the club, provide for kids entering high school next year?
In terms of what?
I believe for playing. So like our 8th grade meeting.
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Well, we have a separate meeting for players going into high school, just all about that. That's a good question. So we have that in around April time, just before tryouts, because when we switch to year of birth over grade age for those families who have been in our club for a few years now, switching to year of birth age grouping to organize teams means that 1 year every year is split between 8th grade and freshmen, and they have off seasons. So in high school, the boys are currently playing, so none of our players born in 2010 who are going into freshmen are currently playing for us because they're playing in high school. But we do have some eighth graders because 2010 currently is the year that's split half between eighth graders and half between freshmen. So it can get quite confusing because there's a year every year that's split like that because high school has different seasons. But to answer your question specifically, we have a specific meeting for eighth grade families to talk to help you navigate going into high school and how to balance school sports. We have Jason Freed, the varsity coach from OPRF, come and talk to you. It's really informative. So great question. If your player is going to high school next season, look out for that meeting just early in the new year when I get the details out. And please let me know if that doesn't answer your question, and I will elaborate a little bit. Any other questions, Gavin?
No, we've been keeping up with them. We're good.
Perfect. So just one more thing about development, because it does happen. You know, as the players get better and as your team gets better, they will move into higher divisions. And, you know, development is not a smooth upward trajectory. It doesn't start at 7 and every week you see them getting better and better. I love coaching U7 and U8s because you do see them getting better every week because they pick up so many new skills very quickly. But as they go into that 9 to 13, when kids start sprouting up, they get physically bigger. Developing at different times, it's not a smooth trajectory. Your child will plateau perhaps for a few weeks, for a few months, and then take off again. You know, your success in soccer is relative to who you're playing. So if other kids are getting bigger and stronger and your child is not, it hasn't witnessed the growth spurt yet, it feels as if they're getting less successful at soccer, but it's not permanent, I would say. And as your team gets better and better, they will go up to better divisions, and the teams that will play will get better. So you may go from a winning season, 7-1, to a season where you're not successful, 2-8, for example, because you've gone up a division to play better teams. That doesn't mean your team is getting worse. It's just a function of your players stronger teams. So please bear that in mind when your team does go up a few divisions. So good sports.
Sorry, just to recap, quick question. The ages of players who can attend free play is U7 through U12.
Yes, birth years 2018 to
2013.
2018 to 2013. 2012 and above players will have a separate extra practice. So just some tips to navigate to make your experience as a parent as best it can be, and make it a positive experience for your young child, because good sports parenting, regardless how good a parent you are and regardless how many books you read, it can be difficult. You know, saying be positive and keep it in perspective, everyone's going to agree with that, but it's really difficult in the moment sometimes to be positive and keep it in perspective because everyone wants to win. A lot of people are very competitive and it's never nice to lose. So, but maintaining the positivity in the sideline is very important. You know, I'll talk about this a little bit in a little bit, but it does go quickly. It always it amazes me when we have a graduating senior class because it feels like yesterday they just joined our program as U7, U8. So it's a quick experience. You know, it should be fun for you as well as your player. So make sure you're positive in the sideline, and remember it's a long-term thing. Losing a game is tough. A bad performance is never pleasant, but keep it in perspective of what you're trying to achieve long term. Focus on the process and not the outcome. Some things in an enjoyable experience are not fun. So focus on the process and not the outcome. I'm as guilty as anyone of doing that. The first question you ask somebody when you see them coming off a field or when your son or daughter's coming home is, did you win? Now that's focusing on the outcome. It's the worst thing to ask, because if they lose, you're just going to re-engage those negative feelings from the game. So get in the habit of saying, did you have fun? Did you do something in the game that you learned in practice? You know, something like that. Focus on something procedural rather than the outcome of the game. What they did well, what they enjoyed particularly about the game. You know, I always use the analogy of running marathons for some, not me specifically, but I have friends who run marathons and they enjoy the experience, but nothing between mile 20 and mile 26 is fun, but it's the overall experience of fun. Losing a soccer game in the last minute is not fun. So trying to keep focus on the overall experience of the enjoyable experience of fun and what we're trying to achieve long term is important. Now, don't coach from the sidelines. This is really, really important. It becomes really confusing for the child if you're shouting instructions on the sideline. We want the players to make mistakes. Losing games and making mistakes are not things to be scared of. They're important for development. If they lose a game, that's fine. Brush it off. Take a lesson from it. No one makes mistakes deliberately. There are lots of mistakes going on in soccer. Soccer is a hard sport to master. You watch the best games during the World Cup, Champions League, MLS, English Premiership, everyone's making mistakes. Lionel Messi makes mistakes. So it's okay to make mistakes. We want the kids to have no fear of making mistakes or losing games. It's all part of the process. And don't coach them from the sidelines is just really confusing. We've had lots of parents or some parents who have played really at a high level. We've had internationals, um, US internationals have their kids in our program. We have college coaches, and they're always the quietest in the sidelines. I'm not exaggerating. They don't say anything on the sideline because they know they've been on the other end. They know what it's like to be in a high level and have lots of people shouting at them, how confusing and how off-putting it is. So please, as much as you can, be quiet in the sidelines. But if you do say something, keep it positive. I would really appreciate that. And don't analyze the game and the journey home. I've been telling parents this for 23 years, and I think I've always thought it was really simple. Just don't talk about the game, easy. But then I coached my daughter in soccer, and I realized it's not as easy as I would imagine. Let's be charitable and say after another underwhelming performance from my daughter, I would sit in my car and I would say, "So how do you think you played today?" And just as my wife's eyes are boring into the side of my head, I realize I've messed up and I changed the subject. So I realize it's difficult not to analyze the game and the journey home, but so much damage has been done on car journeys home from soccer games in the past. Don't talk about it unless your player wants to talk about it. In that instance, have at it. Discuss it with your player. If they've won and they're really excited to tell you all about the things, great, have at it. But if it's been a tough game, the car should be an environment for them just to decompress physically and emotionally. It is not a learning moment. The car journey home is perhaps the worst learning moment. And that's why I tell our coaches not to be verbose after games or keep the kids too long going over things in the game. The kids are tired mentally and physically. They're not taking in information. So our coaches just need to sum something up, outline something positive generally, have one key point, and let the kids go home. And it's the same for the car journey. Just let them decompress. And remember, as I said, soccer is really difficult to master. It's a dynamic sport. It takes years and years to proficiently control and pass a ball, right foot and left foot. It is really difficult. So don't expect too much too early. I see a lot of, let's just say dads, because it's normally dads, uh, giving instructions to their kid or berating a son or daughter for making mistakes. It's okay. And then I go and see the same dads play in the adult league on a Sunday at Lake Street, and they're making the same mistakes. Always feel like shouting at them. But it's hard, it's very difficult. So just keep it in perspective. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. So go and play with your son or daughter. You don't need to coach them. They just would appreciate the time spent with their mum or dad just playing something they love. And as I said before, most importantly, enjoy the experience. We want you and your player to enjoy being a member of our program, and it will be over before you know it. The greatest part of my job is just meeting old players and them telling me great memories of their time with the club. And these are the stories you'll be talking about over Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas and years to come. So make them positive experiences, because it really is a great club and a great program, and I've loved being part of it for so long, and we're very appreciative of you being with us and trusting us with your son or daughter's youth sports experience. Now, you have some resources to help you as parents on our website. If you log into our website, there's a section called Parent Resources. And as a Sprocket Partners, they have a relationship with the Changing the Game series, which is a gentleman, Chris O'Sullivan, that I know pretty well and I've worked with a little bit. He works on a program just in terms of parent education for youth sports and just, appropriate ways to deal with certain issues in youth sports experiences. So I'm going to play this video because it's really informative. Every video is just a minute and a half. It doesn't take too much of your time, but they're really good to listen to and watch and just educate yourself to really maximize the experience for your child. So I'm just going to play this real quick.
I think one of the things as a parent, and I have been a parent for, 16 years now, watching my own kids play sports, and we want to intervene. We want to steal the reps sometimes. We want to jump in and tell our kids to kick it, to shoot, to pass, to step up, to move back. But again, when we're stealing those reps from our children, when we're coaching from the sideline, what's happening is we're stealing learning opportunities. We're often confusing them because we're not at practice all week, so we don't even know what the coach has told them to do. So the coach is telling them oftentimes something else than we're telling them, and they can't listen to 20, 30, 40 voices. They really only need to listen to their teammates and themselves and maybe their coach. So on the sideline of your games, by all means be present. By all means cheer. By all means don't tell people what to do. Don't tell them what to pass, where to move, or anything like that. Let that moment belong to them. And my biggest piece of advice is if you struggle to stand on the sideline of the game and not give instructions, stand further away. So if you're sitting up in the bleachers, you'll probably yell less instructions than if you're sitting 5 yards from the touchline, because I think there's a direct correlation between how close you stand to the game and how much you want to yell instructions.
Wise words from John there. So all the videos from John O'Sullivan are along the same lines, just take different instances in youth, what can occur in youth sports, and they're really, really helpful. So I highly encourage you to look them out in the parent resources page of our website. So I realize that I've actually gone on a lot longer than I usually go on, so I apologize for that. But can I take any questions now about anything that we have in the club, about programs, about your player specifically, that I didn't answer during the talk? Gavin, anything on the chat?
No, I'm currently answering one just because it's easier. It's about how divisions are put together within league.
Sure. Well, I will say, just one thing. If I think I know most people on this call, but if I haven't met you, or you would like to chat about your player specifically or what we do as a club, myself and Gavin don't live in Oak Park. And that was kind of a conscious decision, because anytime we're in Oak Park, we have our soccer heads on. So even if you see me walking down Lake Street, sitting in Jimmy John's or wherever it may be, come and introduce yourself and have a talk. I'm more than happy to talk about soccer in general, your team, your player specifically, anywhere in Oak Park River Forest. So please, if you see me on a sideline, come up and introduce yourself. And I always try and meet parents as much as I can, particularly new parents, because I love to see new faces joining our club. So I definitely am looking forward to seeing everybody on the sideline. That same goes for Gavin. So please approach us. Please email us with any questions you have. I don't want anybody in our club to have too little information. As I said before, I'm also conscious of giving out too much information because it can get lost in the woods a little bit. We do have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, although we don't use Twitter very much anymore. So primarily Instagram and Facebook, to get kind of low-key messaging out, pictures from games, pictures from tournaments, championship wins we might have, we'll post that. But urgent things we will, or urgent information or need to know information for all the families, we will email.
Just one final one. Well, I shouldn't say final. It might not be. The extra Friday practices and the clinics and stuff. They're asking, is it at your usual practice field? That depends where you practice. It's going to be on Priory, so it'll be at Priory West or Priory North. We'll get that out nearer the time. But no, do not just go to where you normally practice. They are specifically at one of those Priory fields. And then, no, the rest was thanks and things like that for what.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate those nice comments. And, this is a great community. I really enjoy working in it. Nobody's perfect, but I speak to a lot of soccer directors who run soccer programs in other parts of Chicago. And every time I talk about, working with parents and issues, they roll your eyes and say, you work in Oak Park River Forest, you don't know how lucky you are, because the general consensus is we have good families in our community. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. So I'm very grateful for your involvement and how we all work together during the year. So I look forward to seeing everybody in the sideline. I hope your young player has a great experience with us. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.